Welcome to Illo Talk. I'm Cory Kerr, and this is day 94 of 100 days of animation where I spend a minimum of 30 minutes every day working on my short film. My short film is about government surveillance and the government spying on its own citizens and the rise of dictators, all told through a small colony of bugs. It sounds really weird when you say it out loud, but that's what it's about, so yeah. Anyway, and this is my main character right here, little guy on a shirt. I figured out something that's been bothering me. I'm kind of excited that I figured it out because I think it's like a normal process of learning something new. And this whole entire thing, I set up that I would take this project on because I wanted to learn how to use After Effects and learn how to animate and make things move. And there's been some highs and lows. Like the first time you make something move, it's like really awesome. Legitimately awesome. It's fairly addicting. And then there's some lows, like going weeks at a time and working hours and hours and hours and having not a ton to show for it. Or redoing the same thing over and over and over again because you keep doing it wrong for whatever reason. Anyway, I figured out a really good analogy that really helped me today. So I'm going to tell you guys about that after the intro music. As a teenager, and I guess fairly recently as well, my family and a couple guys that were in my church group and whatnot, we would go on these hikes. Not all the time, but like once a summer. I think I've been on 6 or 7 or something. Anyway, we'd go up into the Sierras in California, and we would hike around for like 9 to 12 days. We do 60-ish miles, always more than 50. And they were super fun. Like you had to carry everything that you needed on your back. This giant backpack. Actually, it was before I got that one. I had like one of those. We didn't have a ton of money. So I had like old school like metal frame backpack and all this. It was cool. It was really cool. And it was neat to be able to do that. Also, we lived like 26 miles inland from the coast. And so we'd do it right before Hell Week in football. And so we'd spend like a week and a half, 2 weeks up at like 10,000 plus feet elevation where the air is thin and you're hiking around and you're carrying stuff. You're literally doing nothing but exercising all day long. And then we would come back and Hell Week would start in football. And all the guys that went on this hike, we'd be like no problem at all. The air's super thick here down. It's like we're, doping or something. But we weren't. There was just a ton of oxygen in the air, and we had acclimated to exercising in a higher elevation. And so while everybody else around us was running till they puked, we were just, running until we needed a slight drink of water. Anyway, it was kind of fun. And but there was this one time where I was climbing this mountain. It was super steep. I can't remember exactly. I think we raised like 1,000 feet in elevation like every mile for like a little bit, which is crazy. And then it wasn't, there weren't like switchbacks. It was like boulders, like large rocks about this size and a little bit bigger. And like you would step on them and they would slide. And so you're like, not so much hiking as kind of like scrambling and trying not to twist an ankle. For like 10 miles. We didn't raise 10,000 feet every mile for 10 miles, but like it was like 10 miles this first day. And it was a heck of a brutal introduction. And like by the middle of the day, I started realizing that like we had a long ways to go. And what would happen is this. You would have like a peak like that, right? You'd have 2 peaks. And you'd be like here, and you'd think that this was like the summit. That's where you needed to get to today. But in fact, it was actually this one. But this one was obscured by this one, right? And so you're climbing, and there's like a higher peak beyond the one that you can see, but the one that you can see is close to you, and that's all you can see. And so the rest of it is obscured. And so you get up to the top, and you look out, and it's like you're crestfallen because what you thought was like the end or your goal was in fact kind of a false flag, and you had a long ways to go. And that would happen again and again and again and again. I remember one day that happened. It was like 6 times. And it was just like, right there, that little saddle, that's where we've got to get to. That's where we're going. And we can set up camp, and we'd get there, and it was just like, it had barely obscured the next peak, which was way higher. And you'd go and you'd go and you'd go. And after a while, I realized, this sucks, right? This is super depressing. You'd be going and you'd climb, and then you would be like, there's my goal. And you get there and you realize that you set the wrong goal and you were mistaken and didn't understand something. And the point of this is that you didn't know what you didn't know. Like, I wasn't aware that I wasn't aware of the rest of it. I thought I knew everything I needed to know. What is in front of me? I just need to learn that or climb that, and I'll be done. I will get there, right? But then once you ascend to that level, your view is better. You've had some experience behind you, and you look out and you see that you still have a long ways to go. And it's really hard. And I've realized that that's what's been happening with animation, learning animation. I knew it was difficult. I wasn't kidding myself in like the difficulty of it. I knew it was going to be hard, but I didn't know enough or have enough experience with it to understand what I wasn't seeing and what I didn't know. I didn't even know what I didn't know. And so I would climb and I would learn, and I would be like, if I can get to that point, right? And I remember doing this during this 100 days multiple times. If I can just figure out how to rig this character, then it's all smooth sailing from there. That's the peak. I can set up camp, and then I can just finish this thing. And I've set goals throughout this. And I'm not much of a goal setter, but I mean, I've made statements throughout this whole thing that in my ignorance and in my lower level of understanding, as I was journeying through this, they didn't make any sense. I'm not going to complete a short film, having never done anything like this in my life. I'm not going to complete a completely, new story, building the assets and rigging everything in 100 days. That's crazy. Now I understand that because I've ascended to a certain level. I've learned and had experience of 94 days, and I know that that's an insane thing to do, to learn it and execute in such a short period of time. And maybe if this was the only thing I was doing, but anyway, but I've done that a number of times. I keep saying, oh, I see, there's this now, right? There's this level of understanding that I don't get, I have to learn how to do this. And once I learn how to do that, I'm good to go. That's the next peak, right? I'm good. That's it. I've summited. And then you get to that peak and your view changes. You've learned, and you look out over the valley and you see more mountains that are higher that you still have to climb. And eventually when I'm hiking, I get to the top of something, right? It ends at some point. But I don't know that it does in projects and learning new skills and whatnot. I think there's always hidden peaks beyond the one that you're focusing on. And you can't see them because you haven't had enough experience and you haven't traveled high enough to do that. But once you get up to that level, you gain the ability to be able to see the things you couldn't see before. I've been working on the human anatomy, right? And I've been drawing people for the last year or so. And, well, a little bit longer, I guess, but I've been really focusing on it lately. And there are things now that I see that I wasn't even aware of before. When I'm making those decisions and when I'm drawing those things, there are things about the body that I have become aware of because of the work and because of the path that I've trod and because of the height that I've ascended to. And yet, I'm nowhere near where I want to be. And every time I reach kind of a peak or a pinnacle, you take a deep breath and you look up and you see, oh, there's all of that stuff that I don't know how to do yet. And so you keep climbing. And so the epiphany, right? Here's what came to me. The epiphany was, what I need to do is what I did when I was hiking. Is if I focus on what I don't know and what I haven't accomplished, that's really discouraging, and that can be really hard, and it makes it really difficult to stay motivated and work, right? And so you just go, oh man, this is terrible. I remember one time, well, let me finish this analogy and then I'll talk about that other thing. But so what I would do is I would look back. And I don't think you do this often, right? 99.5% of the time, you need to be looking forward, focusing on what you need to accomplish and the improvement that you need to do to get to that point. But every once in a while, not all the time, because you would trip and fall, you need to look over your shoulder and look back and say, you know what? I'm not where I need to be or where I want to be yet, but I'm a lot further along than I was this morning when I started hiking, right? I'm a lot further along in animation. Now, I'm nowhere near, like my timing's bad. I feel like it's still kind of stiff. This animatic is like blowing the doors off of things that I don't know about animation that I'm still learning. And I can fixate on that and just get discouraged. Or I can say, okay, these are the things that I need to do. But 93 days ago, I was down there in the foothills having done nothing. And now I've gone over a couple of these peaks. I've made it several miles. I'm a few thousand feet higher than I was a couple months ago. And I think it's just important to just kind of remind yourself of that. Because I think most artists have this, but I have this thing where I dislike most of what I make pretty soon after I finish it. Sometimes I'll be happy with it for a little period of time, and then I start to see the flaws, or I'm very aware of the flaws the entire time, and I'm just not capable of fixing them. And it can be kind of frustrating to be like, that could be so much better, But at the same time, you can look at your stuff, and you can look at where you were in the past, and you can say, I've made it miles and thousands of feet in elevation from there. So there's improvement. And I'm not competing with anybody else. And art isn't like a competition. And at any given time, I'm going to compare my flaws and worst qualities to everybody else's best qualities, just because human nature is super jacked up like that. And we take what we see of everybody and the incredible, amazing things that they do, and we compare it not to our best, but we compare it to our worst. And just there's this spiral that you can get into. And so, anyway, there's that. A couple of stories for the road that I thought were funny, since we're talking about hiking. One time, I don't know how all of us neglected to bring sports tape, because sports tape, it gives in a specific way, if any of you have ever played any type of athletics. We made it in. We're summiting Whitney, which is the highest point, 14,000 something feet. It's the highest point in the continental 48, right? I think there's stuff in Alaska that's higher. And there's definitely stuff in, Europe and stuff that's way higher. But we were summiting Whitney. Okay. And so you've got like 40 to 60 pounds on your back. You're carrying like your stove and all the stuff you need to sleep with. And we're not like loaded with money. And so I don't have like thousands of dollars to buy the super light stuff. So I've got like a sleeping bag that I got from Walmart. It's not like one of those super compact ones. It's like a basic heavy sleeping bag that you would take to a sleepover when you were 10. Stuff like that, And I don't do this all the time, so I don't have tons of stuff. But anyway, we made it several days in to I think it was like a 9-day thing that we were doing. We made it several days in. We were quite a few miles. I think we were 15 or so miles into the 60-mile deal, and maybe even more. The arch of my right foot fell, so it's supposed to stay curved like this, so that you have some give as you're walking or whatever. And I don't know how this happened or how it wasn't permanent or whatever. It just gave out, and it was so painful. And it's not like you can just call it and you can just say, well, I guess that's it. I'm injured, coach. Put somebody else in. No, you're like in the middle of the wilderness, in the mountains. There's no one that can come and get you. Like, I guess they could send a helicopter, but that's pretty expensive. And it's not like anybody can carry you out. They've got their own stuff to carry. And so I'm climbing with my brothers and my dad and a couple of my old high school coaches. And the arch of my foot falls. It hurts so bad. Every step is like shooting jarring pains up my leg. And it hurt so bad. And I had like 45 miles left to go. And who knows how many thousands of feet in elevation to change. And we had no sports tape. We had duct tape. We had no sports tape. Duct tape is not great for your skin, by the way. So anyway, every morning before we set out, I would have to reinforce the arch of my foot with duct tape. And I got pretty good at it where I was able to do it over my sock so that it wasn't like melting my skin. But anyway, so then it wasn't painful, but I didn't have the use of my ankle or the articulation of my foot. I basically had like a fused weird stub at the end of my leg. But at least it didn't shoot like searing pain up my leg, right? And so I was way slower than everybody else. I'm not the fastest hiker anyway. And my brother-in-law was like, well, I don't know, he's like 10 years younger than I am, but he's also just like flying, and he was super in shape. And everybody else, we were kind of sticking with it. But then once this happened, I was way behind. And so I would just like go. I would take off a couple hours before everybody. They would pass me in the middle of the day, you know, and I would just kind of like hobble along with my weird duct tape fused foot. And we're going up the switchbacks to the final summit. There's kind of this like plateau where you go and you're like in the highest point in the continental 48. And it's pretty cool. You get a picture or whatever. Two things happened that I thought were really interesting. One thing, and this was really gross, but by comparison, it made me feel a lot better, which other people's suffering probably shouldn't make you feel better. I guess I felt lucky and grateful rather than I wasn't happy that this other guy got hurt. We were going up these switchbacks. You're now at like 14,000 plus feet elevation, which if you know anything about that, it's really high and it is hard. It's not like Kilimanjaro or K2 hard, but it's hard. Or what's the other one? Anyway, your life isn't threatened, but it's up there. And so we're going, and I hear like this guy kind of yelling at this girl, and I was like, come on, don't be a dick. I walked up, and he's off to the side, and she's trying to help him, doing the best that she can. And he is laying there, having taken a wrong step, with his shin bone snapped completely in half, protruding out the front of his leg. Like I saw bone. Now, if there is a worse place to snap your leg in half, it's probably a similar situation where you're like in the middle of the mountains. And there are not too many places that would be worse, because he was, I don't know, a couple 100 yards away from the top, but not at the top. And you're in the middle of the Sierras. There's not like great cell service or radios or vehicles of any kind or Sherpas. I mean, I don't know what else your options are. And he was just immobilized. And I thought, at least I can duct tape my foot. I guess I'm super grateful that I'm able to like walk. That's kind of cool. And so anyway, long story short for that dude, somebody was able to get like half a bar of cell phone service, and they called the park rangers, and there was like a helicopter that came, and there's nowhere for the helicopter to land. Like you're on like the side of a cliff face, and there's just like spiky, jagged peaks of the mountain everywhere. And so you could go like land in the valley, you know, which is like a bunch of switchbacks and several miles down, but there's no way that, I mean, you had like snow, like 7 or 8 feet in the air, and they had like carved out a thing, and you would rub your shoulders against the snow and parts of these paths. There's no way that guy could like walk next to someone, and his bone is protruding out of his shin, so there's like, he can't hop. I can't imagine hopping with your leg like dangling and jarring each time. It's not like anybody thought to bring like pain meds or morphine or whatever. You have like, I don't know, man, can I give you some dehydrated eggs? I've got some gorp, you know, like there's nothing that anybody can do for this guy. So the helicopter flies in, and they've got like a stretcher on a rope, and it's hanging from the helicopter, and the helicopter pilot, also, I don't know anything about helicopters. I've been in several helicopters, but I've never flown one. And I can just imagine, based on what I understand, the tail will rotate you this way, and then you've got some other controls, and you're using all 4 limbs all at the same time to keep everything stationary. But you're at the top of a mountain, and so there's like gusts of wind or whatever. Anyway, and so they take this guy, and there's a couple people that kind of rappel off the side of the helicopter and try to like get him onto this thing, and then they like hang on the stretcher with him, and he's basically like, if you've ever like strapped luggage to the top of your car with ratchet straps, they kind of like ratchet strapped him into this big giant plastic board hanging from this helicopter, and then they just lifted up, and they flew down to the foothills to drop him off. I don't know what happened from there, because I was at the top, and he was upset and not chatty, and I didn't want to like bug him, and I didn't know who he was. But that was interesting, right? And then I get to the top. We're at the top, and we take our pictures. We see the little plaque. There's like a little plaque about this big that, you know, it's like bolted into the rock that says, "You guys are amazing." And it was cool. And I'm hanging out like, it's like this big slab at the top, and it's tilted, and so there's like this edge. I'm hanging out on this edge, and it's tilted like this, and we had come in from this side, and then there's a sheer drop on this other side. And all of a sudden, I hear people talking. There's a bunch of people up there. There's probably like 10 to 15 people, hikers, that were up there on that day. And I hear voices coming from the cliff. I was like, what is going on? I look down. There are people rock climbing this cliff face. Thousands of feet. They climbed thousands of feet into the air. And I thought, that would be so much easier than what I just did. Because they like camped that night, and then, or the night before, and then like got up that morning and hiked in and put on their climbing shoes. They didn't have like a pack with them or anything. They had like a lunch, you know, like strapped to their harness. And then they just climbed up the mountain, which I don't want to like say that that's insignificant. It took them all day to do, but it was like, you know, 10 hours, or I don't know if it was 10, some number of hours compared to like a week and a half. And I thought, well, there are definitely easier ways to get up here then, I guess. But it's not always about the shortcut or the quickest route. Because I mean, it was beautiful. It was amazing. A great experience. And it wasn't like we were trying to like rush it. I was trying to hang out with my brothers and my dad and cousins and coaches and whatnot. Yeah, there's about 6 of us. Anyway, and so we got to spend time together, and that was fun. No electronics or anything. It was good. It was really good. And so I don't know what analogy or lesson to pull from the climbers who just kind of shortcutted everything, but I'm sure there's something there too. But anyway, so reach a peak and gain skill and knowledge that you didn't have before, and the ability to see stuff that you didn't see before, and things kind of open up, and then you know where you need to go and what you need to climb next. So, boy, that was a long, rambling thing. But anyway, I feel a lot better about where I'm at with this project, because I took the time to look back, and I know how to do a ton of stuff now. And what I'm able to do today compared to what I was able to do even a couple of weeks ago, I'm significantly faster. And it's going to be good. I'm excited about it. It's going to be great. And after this 100 days, in a week from now, I will not be doing this every night. And I think that's going to help too, because it has become burdensome. It's become a bit of a drag. It's become a bit of a grind. And you've got to grind sometimes. You've got to put your head down and just grind. And but if the only thing that you do is put your head down and grind, and you never are able to look up or switch activities or take a break or do something fun, it becomes more of a burden than an activity. And I'm at that point with this project. So my plan, which I really like, and I kind of fleshed this out when I was talking to Josh Kimball and Scott Circlin. I really like the idea of on and off, and of doing fewer videos, but way more frequent than I've been doing up until I started this thing. So I'm gonna do 1 or 2 videos a week, and I'm gonna work for a week on the animation, and then a week on an illustration. And the reason that I'm incorporating illustration is actually a couple reasons. One reason is I love illustration and I want to do that. And but another reason is I really like shipping things. I really like having things come full circle. And with a comic book, you can finish a panel, you can finish a page. There's a distinct marker, and you've advanced that to that point. With an illustration, I've got some of these drawings that I did that are up in my store. They're done. They're finished. The whole project took me one night on this one, and this one, and this one. And I was able to just start to finish. And there is a certain satisfaction that comes with completion, and there's a certain boost that you get in your movement and your progression from starting, grinding, and finishing something in a short period of time. And so I think it will actually significantly help me to, with animation, at least, and I don't know what I don't know at this point, but for me, there hasn't been very many major milestones. They've been fairly few and far between, and not terribly fulfilling because it's cool, but I don't have anything else to show anybody. And a lot of these videos that I've done over the past 90 something days have been here's the thing that you guys have been looking at for a week. I progressed it another couple frames, or it moves a little bit better, but I don't even know if you haven't been staring at it for hours and hours if you would even notice. So there's not visible stuff, but with something that you can complete, you can go, I had an idea, I had some thumbnails, I had some compositional sketches, I had some value sketches, I inked it, I colored it, it's completed. Look at these stages from start to finish. I can post that on my blog, and I can get feedback, and that feedback can be a driving factor in my motivation. And so I can complete those circles, complete those kind of project completion iterations faster with illustration than I can with I'm going to do an animated short by myself, knowing nothing. And so it's kind of like walking and running when you're first getting started. Run as far as you can, but then stop and walk, and you get like a little bit of a breather and a little bit of a break, and then you run some more, right? And so from here on out, after the 100 days is over, I'm going to do an illustration week and an animation week, an illustration week and an animation week. And that means that every other week, I'm going to complete at least one illustration. And so I'm going to have a ton more products to sell, a lot of stickers, a lot of things to talk about, things to say. Because I've got something to say with this animation, but it is going to take me a year to say it. Whereas I've got something to say with an illustration, and it'll take me 3 days, or 5 days, or a week and a half, or something. So I think that's going to be really helpful. Anyway, I've talked long enough. This is a long episode, so there's been stuff happening on the screen, I'm sure, because I recorded this before I started working on stuff tonight, because I had something to say and I didn't want to forget it. So I'm sure I accomplished something. I don't know whatever it was, but you saw it, so there you go. Anyway, you can catch my stuff at kuretake.com, and things like this are on my site. So I want to show you these in particular. So I'm going to pull up the little thing so I make sure it focuses. So this is one of the pages that I've got going on, and you can see kind of the detail that I did. I was practicing different materials. So you see a lot of clouds and water and metal in this, but that's obviously from Pacific Rim. And here is another one from Pacific Rim. Really like that one as well. Again, you can see kind of the ocean washing up on them. I was still kind of iterating on that. And this one I was experimenting with incorporating white over the top of black inks. And so you can see right here that I've gone in, and I was actually talking to Ryan Otley. And he was telling me that he has this one type of marker, and I got it. And he like loads it up with this white, it's like a paint marker basically. And then he goes down and he like goes and kind of like sudden burst of air, and it splatters. And at the time he was telling me about it, it was a couple years ago, I was like, dude, that's crazy ballsy, right? You spend all day working on this thing, and then you're just going to like leave it to chance on whether you spit air in the right direction over the top of this marker. But I like how that turned out. And I actually really like that technique. And I kind of used like a paper to like mask the part that I didn't want it to hit or whatever. But it's a cool technique. I like that. It's kind of neat. So that one's fun. And then this is, I can't remember the dude's name, but this is a character from Manhattan Projects, which is another Hickman cartoon, and it's Nick Patera that draws this, or drew this. I think he's moving on to, he's been posting a lot of Ninja Turtles pages that he's doing lately. But Dahlgren, I think is his name or whatever. Anyway, radioactive skeleton in a suit. So those are three things that you can find on my website at corykerr.com, and then you click on buy and you'll see stuff there. You can also get shirts like the one I'm wearing and whatnot. And I'm done pitching you and plugging my stuff. So we'll see you guys tomorrow on day 95, where I'll be 95% of the way done with this thing. Not the project, but the grind. We'll catch you guys tomorrow. I'm out.